land that I heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and every dream that you dare to dream of really will come true. Someday I'll wish up on a star, way up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops, way above the chimney tops. That's where can fly over the rainbow, then why can't you and I? Someday I'll wish up on a star, way up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops, way above the chimney tops. That's where you find me.
My name is Timothy Callahan, and it's my great pleasure to serve as the Provost of Bastyr University. And please join me in thanking Pastor Pat Wright, founder of the Total Experience Gospel Choir. I so appreciate Pat being a member of our community for these many years, and especially at this event. And thank you also to Lou Baker, who accompanies her beautifully. Thank you, Lou. It's now my pleasure to introduce the president of the university, Dr. Daniel Church.
Good morning. It's my great pleasure to greet you on the first official day of the academic year. Some of you started a week ago. You didn't know that you were unofficial, but today we're all here together, and especially in this beautiful room, which serves as a reminder to many of us of the intrinsic integration of spirit, body, and mind. Earlier this month, Dr. Norman Francis announced his retirement from the presidency of Xavier University of Louisiana, an historically black Roman Catholic institution in New Orleans. President Francis holds the record for the longest tenure of any college president, having been at Xavier for 66 years, 47 of them as the president. In remarking on President Francis' decision to retire, the Honorable Arne Duncan, United States Secretary of Education, praised his work over these many years and pointed out his tireless commitment to ensure that the graduates of Xavier University should not just go on to jobs and careers, but should also contribute to the promotion of a more just and humane society and take on roles of leadership and service. It is precisely that commitment about which I would like to speak with you today. I would like us to think together about how graduates of Bastyr University might not just go on to jobs and careers, but will also contribute to the promotion of a more just and humane society and take on roles of leadership and service. The mission statement of Bastyr University calls us to prepare future leaders in the natural health, arts, and sciences. And in recent years, we've had a widespread conversation about what we mean by leadership and in what ways we might know whether we are succeeding in our mission to prepare our graduates to lead. In 2004, there was a university-wide effort to articulate the values by which we as a university community live and the values that we share. The 5 links down this side of the presidential chain, which it is my privilege to wear on academic occasions, stand for the 5 values that were identified: integrity, compassion, whole systems health, community, and connection to nature. Incidentally, the 5 links on the other side of the chain represent the 5 schools that the university had in 2005. We now have 3 schools. So I anticipate surrendering this chain to the next president sometime next summer. And I thought I should remove 2 of the school's links to accurately match our current structure. And I puzzled a good bit about the dilemma of which values to eliminate in order to keep our medallion from being lopsided. Happily, our Academic Leadership Council has been at work for some time attempting to articulate a new statement of those things to which we as a community are committed. We have a compelling vision statement, a robust mission statement, a careful articulation of the core themes which inform our work together, and it's my great pleasure to announce that as of today, we have a set of institutional commitments. You should have been given a copy as you arrived. It is intended that these commitments will effectively replace these values along the side of the chain and the global competencies which have customarily been reflected in course syllabi. The statement of commitment suggests that the Bastyr University community of students, faculty, and staff share a commitment to academic rigor, which includes a science-based approach to natural health and wellness with a focus on health promotion, information literacy, research skills, critical thinking, and problem solving. Effective communication, which includes proficiency in written, oral, and nonverbal communication, active listening, respectful conflict resolution, and articulate advocacy. Respectful behavior, which includes ethical conduct, compassion and thoughtfulness, integrity, observance of appropriate professional and interpersonal boundaries, and stewardship of a healthy planet. Intercultural awareness, which includes an understanding of one's own and other cultures and an attitude of curiosity, openness, and humility. And finally, social justice, which includes supporting those who are disenfranchised, marginalized, or oppressed through education, direct service, and advocacy for the well-being of all people. I salute the work of the academic leadership and the members of the President's Cabinet for bringing forward such a clear and compelling challenge, calling all of us to live up to the most elegant hallmarks of a truly higher education, a shared commitment to academic rigor, effective communication, respectful behavior, intercultural awareness, and social justice. At Bastyr University, we have always been known for our commitment to environmental stewardship. Deep in the DNA of the university is the recognition that there are no healthy individuals without healthy communities, and there are no healthy communities without a healthy planet. Perhaps the most visible sign of this commitment is the construction in 2010 of 11 buildings which were to become the first Platinum LEED certified student housing west of the Mississippi River. It is apparent, too, in our comprehensive recycling and composting programs, our aggressive commuter trip reduction plan, and in many other ways. As a principally science-based graduate and professional university with relatively few undergraduate students, and those only in their upper division sequence, we have lacked the humanizing influence of the traditional core of the college curriculum. We do not teach the arts, politics, history, and literature, which have the potential to broaden our ability to live up to our full potential as well-rounded human beings. I am gratified that this concern is not mine alone. After years of quite appropriately bragging about our rigorous science base, in 2007 we finally acknowledged that the health we seek to engender in ourselves and in all the members of the human family is not solely based on science. And we amended our organizational documents to use the term natural health, arts, and sciences. Nevertheless, the curriculum was still largely based in the hard sciences. In 2009, we established the Bastyr Center for Spirituality, Science, and Medicine in recognition of the affirmation that body, mind, and spirit are intrinsically inseparable, and to bring attention to the life of the spirit in our curriculum and in our common life. That center, which has been ably directed by Dr. Christy Lee Engel, sitting right over there, give her a hand. That center has recently been renamed the Center for Mind, Body, Spirit, and Nature, and it continues to provide stimulating programming year-round across all our 3 campuses. Recognizing that another dimension of our work is intrinsically political, and that politics can have a profound impact on health, in 2011, we established the Bastyr University Center for Health Policy and Leadership. Through the good work of its director, Ms. Heather Carey, who is in Washington, D.C. today, the center continues to provide advocacy training for our students so they can be articulate spokespersons for their views and persuasive in their arguments in support of healthcare reform and the advancement of their natural health disciplines. Until now, our commitment to social justice and our work in nurturing cultural competency and strengthening our commitment to diversity has been more subtle. Our vision statement says that through an integrated approach to education, research, and clinical service, we are committed to the transformation of the health and well-being of the human community. Most often, however, I hear people refer to our efforts to transform health care rather than health. It is absolutely true that one dimension of the health of the human family has to do with each individual's access to health care. But when I hear our alumni talking about health care reform, it is usually in the interest of achieving more equitable reimbursement for their professional services. That is a fair and necessary issue to address. Indeed, we suffer from an inequitable distribution of resources among the various health professions, and notably, naturopathic physicians who may in fact be the solution to the crisis in primary care are paid embarrassingly low compensation when compared to conventional medical practitioners. I worry about this fact, and to the degree that I can, I work for a change. I worry more, however, that we less frequently bring our most robust resources to bear on another inequity in the so-called healthcare system, and that is the tragic history of inequitable access. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, of all the forms of inequality, injustice in healthcare is the most shocking and the most inhumane. Washington University professor Melody Goodman said in an address this summer at the Harvard School of Public Health, "Your zip code is a better predictor of your health than your genetic code." A recent Robert Wood Johnson study has established, for instance, that within the limits of the city of New Orleans, Louisiana, life expectancy varies 25 years between two neighborhoods, one wealthy and white, one poor and black. In 2013, in a speech to the ARC, President Barack Obama, speaking of a similar geographic disparity in Detroit, Michigan, said, "A child's course in life should not be determined by the zip code into which he is born, but by the strength of his work ethic and the scope of his dreams." In the same address, the president pointed out that a child born in the top 20% of average household income has a 2 out of 3 chance of staying in the top 20% throughout his life. A child born into the bottom 20% has a less than 1 in 20 chance of making it into the top 20. He is 10 times more likely to stay at the bottom. The top 10% of income earners in the United States take in 1/2 of all the income in the nation. The average corporate CEO makes 273 times more money than the average employee in that corporation's workforce. A family in our nation's top 1% has a net worth 288 times higher than the average family's net worth. That's not 288 times higher than the poor families. That's 288 times higher than the average, which includes the top 1%. I happen to be a fan of President Barack Obama, but flying Air Force One is expensive. In fact, it costs about $250,000 per hour to operate. Judicial Watch recently reported that in 2013, taxpayers paid $7.3 million for the first family's vacations to Hawaii and Martha's Vineyard, plus one appearance by the president of Jay Leno's Tonight Show. Meanwhile, women still make 77 cents on the dollar compared to men in our nation. Notwithstanding the generous benefit of the Affordable Care Act, 1 in 5 African Americans are still uninsured. African American adults are twice as likely as white adults to be diagnosed with diabetes, and African Americans are 2.7 times more likely to have lower limb amputations as a standard course of treatment. Why is it that in 2013, black women were 40% more likely to die of breast cancer than white women? According to Thomas LeBeast, director of the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Disparities Solutions, racism plays out in many different ways, not only in terms of differential treatment that people receive when they go into the healthcare system, but also because the kinds of communities people are able to live in and get access to. Because this country is still racially segregated, black people and white and Hispanic people are being exposed to very different risks. Dr. Valerie Montgomery Rice, Dean of the Morehouse School of Medicine in Atlanta, advises physicians in this way: what you must do is look at every patient and ask one question: what is possible? Take a 68-year-old woman who has limited resources, so if I prescribe for her a medication she cannot afford, then I'm not going to have done her a service. I have to get creative about providing her with some social support if this is the only drug that she can take. I must look at alternatives. Does she have transportation to get down to the rehab treatment center for what I'm saying she needs to do every week? Now, my friends, that's our kind of medicine. We say we look at life and health holistically, but are we looking at the subtle and the systemic ways in which our actual practice falls short of the medicine's potential and falls victim to the institutional racism which still remains rampant in our society? Inequitable access to care is a critical problem, but ensuring access is not enough. Bastyr University must also equip its graduates with the cultural competency to meet people where they are, and as we love to say, remove the obstacles to cure. In the same way, racism is not the only problem. According to the Washington Department of Health, social and economic determinants of health include chronic stress, early childhood and generational factors, race and ethnicity, income inequality and wealth, education, social capital, neighborhood characteristics, lifestyle, and access to medical care. There is room for us to speak to every one of these issues as we prepare future leaders to transform the health and well-being of the human family. One of the great champions for change in our region is Dr. David Fleming, until recently the Director of Public Health for Seattle and King County. More than any other local voice, in my opinion, Dr. Fleming has spoken out about the justice issues implicit in our city, county, and nation's health profiles. Of the 27 nations which spend the most on health care, the United States is first, spending almost twice as much as Norway, our closest competitor. But of the same 27 nations, our life expectancy is the lowest. Of the same 27 nations, our ratio of social services spending to health care services spending is lowest by far. We have invested in high-tech interventions largely applied in the last few weeks of life, while we are not investing in the necessary infrastructure that provides housing, green groceries, and education and family support to our nation's most needy. 97.1% of our nation's healthcare spending is applied to 50% of our population, while 2.9% is left to meet the needs of the remaining 50%. In fact, 5% of our population consumes 50% of all the dollars expended on healthcare. Dr. Fleming recently resigned his post, giving up the bully pulpit he so eloquently occupied, and within a few days, it was announced that our own King County is slashing the upcoming operating budget by $8.9 million, with most of the cuts coming out of health and transportation. The public transit system is expected to lose 400,000 hours of service, losing 11% of the transit routes that have until now allowed poor people access to services. Ironically, according to the New England Journal of Medicine, which looks at the contributors of health care contributes only 10%, while genetics 30%, and the environment and behavior 60%. Just as racism is not the only problem, so also health is not the only problem. We rightly ask forgiveness for the heritage of slavery when one person naively believed he could own another, and through that conceit brought tragedy and despair on generations of innocence. According to the King County Department of Health, however, human trafficking is the use of force, fraud, or coercion to compel a person into any form of labor against his or her will, i.e. slavery. A 2008 study of commercial sexual exploitation of youth in King County, Washington, estimated that at that moment, 300 to 500 girls were being trafficked. Law enforcement experience has suggested that this is a serious undercount. The average age of those youngsters was 15.5 years, with some children as young as 11 years of age. Some were runaways, some were illegal aliens, all were victims. In a recent national study done by the University of Arizona, King County, Washington had the highest number of felony convictions for child sex trafficking of any county in the United States of America. Duke University professor Eduardo Bonesavilla spoke in Seattle last week. He said the problem of race is not racists, but racism, not individuals doing or saying something obviously racist, but by people collectively being complicit in systems that privilege one group while damaging another. Racism is more than prejudice. It's a social system and a very adaptable one. He points out that as our nation moves away from a white majority, we should not expect to erase racism. Further, Bonilla Silva says that many white people want to think they are beyond racism, but passively cooperate in racist structures like biased school discipline systems, bank loan practices, and excessive use of police force and more. He points out that any movement against racism needs to form connections with people working against other oppressions, whether based on gender, class, or some other part of a person's identity. As Seattle Times columnist Jerry Large puts it, forcefully confronting unfairness, no matter who it affects, is the only way to shut down systems and practices that perpetuate inequality. So, okay, let's bring this back home. In the fall of 2006, some students invited me, the members of my administration, and some faculty members into this room, and we were instructed to sit right over there, while these students, one by one, shared anecdotes from their experiences at Bastyr University. They spoke clearly, calmly, and with amazing charity as they chronicled unimaginable sensitivity bordering on abuse at the hands of their fellow students, faculty, and staff. No one accused or disparaged anyone. They just recounted their heartrending experiences and graciously referred to our general lack of cultural awareness. Several people who were there are in this room. In particular, I want to remember Dr. Marie Sabine Thomas and Dr. Sophia McCarter, who with amazing generosity of spirit named our shortcomings out loud. There was an agreement that we would not respond immediately, but we would meet again after we had time to think. In due course, a subgroup of these students took on the leadership and with our support, embarked on an anti-racism training program. They formed a group called the Bastyr University Cultural Awareness Task Force and began hosting events to raise consciousness and provoke insight. By 2007, as you might guess, we hired a consultant to help the university find ways to move toward culturally competent education. Throughout that year, there were a dozen or so efforts to move the agenda forward, including leadership meetings with representatives of the cross-cultural healthcare program at the University of Washington. By 2008, under the leadership of Vice President Susan Whiter, she and several students participated in a Train the Trainer program and brought back their wisdom to enhance our efforts. Curricular changes were being made and productive conversations were going on all over campus. At length, the midwifery department, under the leadership of Professor Susie Myers, brought forward effective models which could be adapted to coursework in any discipline. By 2010, an official diversity committee was formed. A commitment statement was approved, a mission statement and goals were established to address an agenda inclusive of, but not limited to, racial, ethnic, religious, gender expression, and sexual orientation differences. Consistent leadership from Dr. McCarter and Professors Susie Myers, Christy Hofsis, and Daniel Rosen has brought us community-wide meetings, the amazing Michelle Eustache Memorial Human Library Program, several productive faculty training programs, including work on a quarter-long social justice and diversity seminar with Dr. Caprice Hollins. Most recently, the faculty spent a day with Lei Moon Hua, and in the evening hosted the screening of his critically acclaimed documentary film about racism in higher education, If These Halls Can Talk. Last spring, I engaged Dr. Patricia Chidell to help our admissions department and our human resources department successfully recruit more students and staff from communities of color. Her effective inroads into the Native American, African American, and Hispanic communities are already paying off. Along the way, leadership has continued to be provided by students. Earlier this summer, 4 of our naturopathic medical students became voluntarily homeless for a week. Allie Donnell, Lydia Peters, Jenna Bialo, and Kristen Thorvalson lived in the out of doors without cell phones or amenities of any kind. They ate only what food was put into a box for donation, and they did their best to understand a life they had never lived. In their own words, and I quote, "We thought it important to put ourselves in the shoes of our future patients." And now we come full circle. I am so proud of these young women for anticipating that poor, homeless, disenfranchised, marginalized people will be among their future patients. Too often our alumni have opted for cash practices that risk shutting out people for whom this care is unaffordable. I recognize that our graduates have to pay off their school loans, but justice requires all of us to give a fair share of our effort and our professional service to those who cannot pay us. According to S. Allen Ray's editorial in the August 15th issue of the Chronicle of Higher Education, education means bringing students into a multiplicity of competing ideas and worldviews, perspectives, and traditions, preparing them to navigate the path from a monocultural world to one of social complexity and ambiguity. It assumes that a college or university should be an arena for student self-formation, a place for students to shape themselves as more fully realized individuals, good citizens, productive and compassionate contributors to society. It sounds like Dr. Ray has been sitting at the feet of President Francis Norman at Xavier, where every graduate is expected to promote a more just and humane society by taking on roles of leadership and service. May it be so among us and those whom we send out into the world for good. It is my pleasure to tell you that in the ongoing evolution of our embrace of these issues, I am today announcing the establishment of the Bastyr University Center for Social Justice and Diversity. The Center for Social Justice and Diversity has been funded with operating resources and will be co-directed by Drs. Dan Rosen and Christy Hofsis. Please greet them now and give them your support. Center Center for Social Justice and Diversity will work to ensure that every course in the curriculum finds ways to teach cultural competency, encourage advocacy, and appreciate diversity. When I gave my first convocation address in this room in September of 2005, I said I hoped that the university would be widely known for our radical hospitality. I believe we have made progress in this area. We no longer use antagonistic language to describe our medicine. Even as we continue to refine our own, we have come to recognize the contributions of conventional approaches to care. We have diversified our curriculum, and students, faculty, staff, and visitors are made to feel welcome when they come into our midst. Now we have a new agenda, to not just welcome them, but to seek to understand and celebrate their unique contributions to our shared life. My hopes for our university community are based on 4 things. My experience in this nearly decade that I have been privileged to work among you. My pride in all the amazing good that has been and is being done. My convictions about what we can and must do better. And my confidence that we can and will do it. I know that I have taken a lot of your time this morning to spin out my hopes for our community, but this is my last academic convocation as your president, and I am not going to give up this bully pulpit until I have said as much as I can. I hope you know how proud I am of all of you and how confident I am that you will change the world for good. Before we turn to our candle ceremony, it's my pleasure to ask the Reverend Presidential Wright to join me at the podium. Pastor Pat has been part of our annual fall tradition for as long as we can remember. She's an essential part of our celebration times and has been a tremendous friend and comfort in our times of sorrow. She shared herself with us when one of our founders, Dr. Bill Mitchell, died, and when Michelle Eustache was snatched from life. She's been a lifelong ambassador for justice, and she's brought so much joy into the world that I think of her as a shining Christmas angel. Her biography has been distributed to all of you this morning, so you will know what she does when she's not here. And it is not a trivial task. I cannot retire from the scene without acknowledging her in a small but heartfelt way with the Presidential Citation, the highest honor that I am able to bestow as the President of Bastyr University. Bastyr University gratefully acknowledges the manifold contributions of Pastor Presidential Wright to the transformed health and well-being of the human community through her steadfast commitment to justice and to joy. Through her many years of singing and preaching the gospel of peace, equity, and transformation, she has urged responsible action to heal broken relationships, break down barriers, address disparities, bring relief to the suffering, and in so doing has touched the lives of millions of people who, like us, remain in her debt. In recognition of these contributions, it's my pleasure to bestow upon Presidential Wright the President's Citation for Exemplary Service, presented in Kenmore, Washington, this 29th day of September in the year 2014.
Thank you so much, Dr. Church. And thank you, faculty and students of this very wonderful institution calling itself Bastyr. It has been a pleasure to be with you all these years. And I'm going to thoroughly miss you. And I'm hopeful that, of course, this goes on my mantle, bragging rights. I'm hopeful that each student new student that's coming in will understand how special you are and how many people out there are depending upon what you learn here to make this world a better place in which to live. Personally, I have been diagnosed with something called sick sinus. And I said, "You mean the sinus is sick?" And she said, "Yes, we don't know what you have. We don't know what your brother has. We don't know what your older sister has." So we gave it a name, sick sinus. So hopefully in my lifetime, maybe if I should live another 20 years, that someone will find a cause and a cure for sick sinus and make it well sinus. Thank you so much again, and I'm about to cry, so I better get over there and sit down. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
We will now proceed with the ceremonial start of the new academic year with our candle lighting ceremony. Candles you see here, the largest candle represents Bastyr University, and the president will light his taper from the university candle. The other candles represent the schools at Bastyr University. The School of Traditional World Medicines, represented by Dean Hazel Philp. The School of Natural Health, Arts and Sciences, represented by Dean Linnell Golden. And the School of Naturopathic Medicine, represented by Associate Dean Ariana Sturby. And we will now light all tapers while Pastor Pat Wright leads us in song.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine. Jesus gave it to me, and I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. All around the world, I'm gonna let it shine. All around the world, got to let it shine. All around the world, gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. That's why I know that this little light of mine and yours, you've got to let it shine. This little light of yours, you must let it shine. This little light of yours, you've got to make it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Let your light shine.
We're still lighting up in the loft, so you just keep at it.
Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Up in the loft, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Here and there and everywhere, shine, let it shine. Let your little lights shine. We must let our lights, S-H-I-N-E, shine.
The flames represent education and knowledge, the information that helps us dispel the darkness of ignorance and prejudice. As expressed by Rabbi Michael Strassfeld, light gives of itself freely, filling all the available space. It does not seek anything in return. It asks not whether you are friend or foe. It gives of itself, and it is not thereby diminished. The same can be said of education. Draw in as much education as you can, and then disseminate it wisely, filling up all the available space. Let us carry the flame of Bastyr University in our hearts, our minds, and our souls. You may be seated. The two candles that remain lighted are the Bastyr University candle and the memorial candle. As we celebrate the start of a new academic year, let us take time to remember those members of our community who have come this way before us. We are honored to carry the light of Dr. John Bastyr, Dr. Bill Mitchell, alumni, students, faculty, and trustees who have passed on. We shall not forget them.
and touch somebody's hand. Make the world a better place. Yes, we can reach out and touch somebody's hand. Make the world a better place. We can. Someone who may have lost their way, just strike. Would I be talking a little too strong if I asked each of you to share a problem that's not your own? We can change things when we start giving. So why don't we just reach out and touch somebody's hand? Make the world a better place. Only you and I can reach out and touch somebody's hand. Make the world a better place. We can. Shoes might fit your feet. Just try on kindness. You will see kindness is something that comes very naturally. You and I can change things when we start giving. So why don't we just reach out and touch somebody's hand? Make the world a better place. I know we can reach out and touch somebody's hand. Make the world a better place. Yes, we can. So why don't we all just touch? Reach out and touch the person beside you, touch the person in front of you, touch the person behind you, touch. Reach out and touch. Reach out and touch. Reach out and touch. Just reach out and touch somebody's hand. Make this world a better place. Yes, if you and you and you and even you, we can.
Thank you for participating in this year's convocation. A special thanks to Pastor Pat Wright. Best wishes to all of you throughout this academic year. Please remain seated until the recessional is finished and the regular academic schedule will begin at 10 a.m. Thank you.